There is a lot to be said for living in the city, where you can have everything that you want and need right on your doorstep. But there are challenges. City real estate can be very expensive, and sometimes that means living in a smaller space. Thankfully, good design can come to the rescue, and that is exactly the case with this next stunning apartment that we're about to visit here in Melbourne, Australia. Hey Doug, how's it going, mate?
Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you. Really nice to meet you.
Good, nice to meet you too.
This is a very cool part of town that you're in, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the hip part of town.
Now, you're an architect, aren't you?
Yeah, yes I am.
So this must have been a really interesting opportunity for you to create something very special in your own home.
Yeah, it was a bit of an experiment. So this used to be nurses' quarters in the 50s and was later converted to apartments. So when I came along and saw the plan, I thought that you could use an update.
Well, I am very excited to check out the inside of the apartment and see how you've transformed it. Can we check it out?
After you.
Thank you very much. This is such a great looking space. It's super interesting the way that you've done all this. It looks like you've essentially constructed everything out of plywood.
Yep, I didn't want for people to come in and see the apartment in its entirety straight away. So I wanted that to be kind of a sheaf of material of program before they enter the space.
So what size is this apartment?
It's 28 square meters. It's roughly 4.5 by 6 meters.
What were some of the key characteristics that you wanted to put into this apartment?
I think there was quite a primal instinct to have a cave as you come in and then open up towards the light in the next room. So coming into the kitchen and seeing that glimpse of the light beyond, it's quite important. So the existing conditions of the apartment was really luxurious in the sense that they had a full bath in the bathroom. So, the bathroom becomes a lot more utilitarian than potentially what they used to have. And I thought the kitchen should absorb a bit of that space. So what I did was knock down load-bearing walls in this apartment, and to provide a clear space within the internals of the apartment, we put in the beam, and the beam runs across the width of the apartment. It's about 4.7 meters, and what it does is it picks up the load from above. It's keyed into the walls on either side and allows me to place walls wherever I want in the internal space.
And talk to me about your kitchen space.
So I found that 1.8 meters is all you need for a kitchen, and the width is quite limited. So what happens is if you go deep, then you'll find you have more than enough space for prepping food, and then maybe washing vegetables, and then cooking on the right. And then perhaps when you're cleaning up later, you just move off to the side, and then when you're washing up the dishwashers where you need it to be on the right.
And what about the storage in the kitchen?
So storage is full height. It's just to give you that sense of space in the kitchen. And what happens is you can access it from both sides. So practically, while you're reaching for food stuff down here, on the other side, there's a step up that allows you to reach the items that are a bit high up in the cupboard.
It's really interesting what you've done here, because you've got these very beautiful modern fixtures that are built in with plywood, but it's offset against the original brick in the building.
Yeah, so high contrast is what I'm after. If I'm going with texture, then I want to offset that with a smooth surface. So it's material versus what is almost materialless.
And I like what you've done here with the space for putting your shoes.
It's for pragmatic purposes. Like, I've hidden a lot of the plumbing under this platform. So with that, the detail was just to create an alcove for the shoes.
And then I see you're even hiding a washing machine in there as well.
Yep, so all the appliances are in this zone, and there's a washer-dryer combo. So what happens is this apartment is completely self-contained. Moving away from the kitchen, we've got this large joinery piece that moves from additional bench space, kettle, rice cooker, and then another window which brings light in. And then it flows into a sort of threshold space.
And then before moving into the living space proper, we have your bathroom in here.
Right, so what I wanted to do was have the tiles visually continue from the kitchen into the bathroom. And then at the end of that, you have this full height mirror, which brings the outside space into what is actually a very small space.
It certainly does. One of the things that I especially like in the bathroom is the way that you've done the lighting. Having that light panel come through from the living room is such a nice touch.
So it's a small space, and that feeling is intensified by the color of the tiles and the proportion of the bathroom. So what I wanted to do was to have light at both ends, so you can still have that feeling of openness and that extension of light, even though it's a small space. So it's about contrast again, offsetting dark against light, about texture against the plain and smooth.
That is undoubtedly something that you have done very well in this space.
Thank you.
Now, I am excited to see what you've done in your living space. Can we check that out?
Okay, step 2.
This is just so nice. It's so interesting the way that you've created these two very different feeling spaces inside the home. The first area with the kitchen and the bathroom felt a little bit darker, a little bit more enclosed, and then walking into this space, you just have a complete sense of the area opening up before you.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about being in a compressive space and the expansion of space as you move through a threshold. So that's something usually used in religious buildings where you have a movement from the profane to the sacred. But here it's just a living space, so it's more about that feeling of release as you come in through the light. So the irony is that in a tiny apartment, what you want to do is to create some separation of zones. So the functional zones as you enter, and the clear living space for the bulk of the space. And what we did was think of the functionality of the 3 zones at the front. So there's the kitchen, there's this sort of threshold / wardrobe, and then there's the bathroom. The arrangement of which creates this composition of a portal and uses on either side as you come through the space.
And then we have your workspace here. Now this is a very important place in your home because obviously you're an architect and you do a lot of your work from home.
Yeah, so it's nice being able to be in the space in the mornings especially, and then feeling the sun shift from this side over to the west throughout the day, and feeling that passage of time within the living space.
And talk to me about the workspace that you've created here. You're using this lovely live edge wood for it.
This was a university project that required us to make a functional piece of furniture that pushes the boundaries of what is practical. In this instance, I wanted a work desk. So what this does is, when it's a workspace, all the clutter is in front and papers get pushed into this alcove. And then what I do when I want to play is I push that open and start playing.
Very cool. I really like how you've done that.
It's a good reason to procrastinate.
Absolutely. A little bit of creative inspiration maybe if you get stuck on a design, right?
Yeah.
Now it looks like the bulk of all of the functionality in this area is all built into this part of the space. Can you talk to me about how all this works?
So the joinery extends visually from what we see in the kitchen in a single gesture to the end of the space. And then what happens is all of that edge gets built into a storage unit. And then thinking about the easiest way how to accommodate all of the living and sleeping uses in the space. The decision was the simplest way is to just build a platform. So something that has multiple affordances and can accommodate a lot of different uses, although it's just a single plane. So most of the time the bed sits on top, and it's only really when I have guests that I make the space look presentable and the big slides underneath, and then that's this clear space for people to sit on top. I really was inspired by the early pre- and post-war social housing of the 30s and 20s, and then traditional Japanese tea houses where the spaces are defined by a single shift in plane and the tokonoma at one end of the space, and how that orients you towards the windows, and treating it as an abstraction, so you don't have the folding bed and you don't have a table with 6 chairs. So it's treating this living space as a sort of dual mode space. So 90% of the time I'm in here alone. The bed can sit on top of the platform. And then thinking about what happens when I do have people over and this becomes a social space, and how often that transition needs to take place. And it's that thing about making the most out of the space without having conventional furniture. So if I had this table here and we were just 2 people, this would be all the space that you need. But if I had 6 people in here, would I need 6 chairs? No, because it's the platform. So I've had 6 people in here, and you have half of them on the platform and maybe 2 in a couple of chairs. And that's all you need. So I find usually that people are like water. People are more adaptable than objects. So what happens usually is people just find a space where they can.
So how long have you been living in the home now?
It's been a good year.
And how are you finding the spaces working for you?
Life has never been easier, really. It's a simple space, it's easy to clean, it's easy to lock up and travel, and it's just a nice big space to work in throughout the day.
One of the things that I really love about the concept of tiny house living in cities is that you have this very big world right on your doorstep. Just outside, there are really nice bars, cafes, restaurants. There really is so much to be said for living right in the heart of the city, isn't there?
It's thinking about the apartment as a sort of urban space or a consequence of urban living where you have a community, you have a society of people who need to share resources and spaces with each other. So treating the city as an extension of your living room comes naturally from that fact. I grew up in the suburbs and I always wanted to be close to where the action is, but not so close that I'm affected by it on a daily basis. So I wanted to be in the thick of it, but be able to live a sort of monastic life at the same time. So it's a strange contradiction, but that's really what I'm after.
Not including the cost of purchasing the apartment, because obviously the apartment price is going to vary immensely depending on where you are purchasing it. But what was the cost of the renovation project?
I think it was somewhere around 50 to 80 grand. It really helps to have someone professional do it, someone who knows what they're doing. I can handle design, but you really want experts to weigh in where you need an expert. I'm not sure if the semi or the quasi-monastic life is for everyone, but this is an ideal scenario for me. Like, I like that it's transformable, but not through gadgets or materials. I like that it's simple enough for people to instantly get the space. I do show the space to a lot of people who think I've sacrificed some quality of life to live here, but I feel like it's not, because I didn't have to sacrifice anything to live here. It's kind of been a luxury in a lot of ways.
Well, Doug, I think you have constructed yourself a very beautiful home here. It is a spectacular haven right in the middle of a wonderful and crazy city. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. It was great to have you.
I think Doug has done such a spectacular job with the design of this home. You can tell how each and every inch of it is so well thought out and considered. I really like the inspiration that he's taken from Japanese design. I love the multi-levels and how that really creates a sense of different zones within a relatively small footprint. And most of all, I love the way that this acts as a sanctuary for him, yet a space which is still so connected to the city and the outside world just out the doors. Ultimately, this really is a fantastic living space.